Long ago in the land of Israel, long before the birth of Christianity, long before Jesus and John the Baptist, back in the days when a great Jewish temple stood on Mount Moriah in the heart of Jerusalem, there existed an important ancient sect known as the Essenes. Their origin continues to captivate inquiring minds. After all, the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were arguably written by the Essenes, present visions of the end of days, of cataclysmic war between supernatural forces of good and evil, and of a new temple which will descend from the heavens by divine agency.
I shall sanctify my temple with my glory, for I will cause my glory to dwell upon it until the day of creation, when I myself will create my temple.
But we shouldn't think of the Essenes as just the authors of the Dead Sea Scrolls, because it now appears likely that the Essenes were a much larger parent group who gave birth to multiple subgroups, and who were one and the same as the mysterious Enochians, responsible for the Book of Enoch and many similar texts. We can even think of the Essenes, or Enochians, however we want to refer to them, as the parent group of the Judeo-Christians and what would become Christianity. Of course, they never call themselves Enochians or Essenes, but they do call themselves sons of light, as if they were channeling some higher dimension.
The first attack of the sons of light shall be undertaken against the forces of the sons of darkness, the army of Belial, the troops of Edom, Moab, the sons of Ammon, when the exiles of the sons of light return from the wilderness of the peoples to camp in the wilderness of Jerusalem. Then the sons of righteousness shall shine to all ends of the world, continuing to shine forth until the end of the appointed seasons of darkness.
Is it a coincidence that in the New Testament the Apostle Paul employs similar language?
You were formerly darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. For you are all sons of light and sons of day. We are not of night nor of darkness.
The backstory of the Sons of Light involves an ancient community of Jewish priests and prophets living in the 4th and 3rd centuries before the Common Era. It's easy to speculate that they descended from an earlier class of visionary prophets who for centuries were convinced of the corruption of the ruling elites, the so-called Zadokite priests in charge of the Jerusalem temple. The prophet Ezekiel had backed their claim to power.
But the Levitical priests, the sons of Zadok, who performed the duty of my sanctuary when the children of Israel went astray from me, shall come near to me to minister to me, and they shall stand before me to offer to me the fat and the blood, declares the Lord God.
This ruling priestly class ultimately evolved into a party known as the Sadducees, infamously identified in the Christian Gospels as conspiring against Jesus of Nazareth. The Zadokites traced their lineage all the way back to King Solomon's high priest, Zadok, and back even further to Moses' brother Aaron. But the marginalized visionary prophets were a popular spiritual alternative to mainstream Enochic Judaism as administered by the temple authorities. Even today, New Age forms of spirituality are an attractive antidote to the dry and desiccated rituals associated with mainstream religion. In fact, the visionary prophets, including the anonymous authors behind the last 11 chapters of Isaiah and the last 6 chapters of the book of Zechariah, had an even stronger claim to authority. They traced their lineage back to Moses himself. Often called Mushites after Moses, they found themselves excluded from the temple, ultimately focusing on the spirit world, based on visions and special revelations. At least in their own minds, they were channeling God. That's how we end up with apocalyptic messages, such as recorded by the prophet Malachi.
Behold, I am sending my messenger to clear the way before me, and the sovereign you seek shall come to the temple suddenly. As for the angel of the covenant that you desire, he is already coming. But who can endure the day of his coming, and who can hold out when he appears? For he is like a refiner's fire and like launderer's soap. He shall act like a smelter and purger of silver, and he shall purify the descendants of Levi and refine them like gold and silver, so that they shall present offerings in righteousness.
Perhaps via trance-like states, or perhaps even through ingesting psychoactive agents found in plants such as mushrooms, these visionaries took religion to a new level. And that essentially was the birth of Jewish mysticism, which evolved into what came to be called Kabbalah. What resulted was bitter competition and conflict between these two polar opposites and religious rivals. It was a classic case of the ins and the outs. The Zadokites were the ins, and the visionary Mushites were the outs. During the first few centuries before the Common Era, we don't know exactly when, some members of this mystical cadre focused their attention on the early biblical patriarch Enoch, the seventh in line from Adam.
And I, Enoch, I alone saw the likeness of the end of all things. Nor did any human being see it, as I saw it.
This new breed of prophets so focused on Enoch that they spawned an entire variety of Judaism that we can call Enochic Judaism, and we can rightly call them Enochians. The Zadokite priests, with their pragmatic, monolithic mainstream Judaism, had all the power, but the marginalized Enochians, with their apocalyptic visions, had all the charisma. At the center of Enochic Judaism was a distinctive system of thought involving fallen angels known as the Watchers, who abandoned their heavenly state and descended to earth, cohabiting with human women and producing a monstrous race of giants.
They have gone to the daughters of men upon the earth, and have slept with the women, and have defiled themselves, and revealed to them all kinds of sins. And the women have borne giants, and the whole earth has thereby been filled with blood and unrighteousness. And the spirits of the giants afflict, oppress, destroy, attack, do battle, and work destruction on the earth, and cause trouble.
That, according to these Enochians, is the true origin of human sin. Enochic Judaism may be thought of as an inner priestly movement of dissent whose influence was widespread, becoming a major factor in ancient Jewish society. Their beliefs included an excessive amount of dabbling with the names of angels, messianic fervor, Gnosticism, and eschatological speculation.
There, I saw another vision. I saw the habitations and resting places of the saints. My eyes beheld their habitations with the angels, and their resting places with the holy ones. They were entreating, supplicating, and praying for the sons of men, while righteousness like water flowed before them, and mercy like dew was scattered over the earth. And thus shall it be with them forever and forever.
Their practices were more like Christian monasticism than the generally accepted Jewish way of living. The practices of the Essenes included vegetarianism, dwelling in isolated groups, communal ownership, monastic asceticism, and avoidance of money, commerce, and private property. And among some of them, celibacy. Also, they had some forms of non-traditional observances, such as round phylacteries, called in Hebrew tefillin. The Enochians cultivated their visions and systematically collected them in a series of books, 5 of which were gathered together in a massive volume today known as the Book of First Enoch. It dates from somewhere in the 3rd century BCE to the turn of the Common Era. Additional Enochian writings include the Book of Jubilees.
And the angel of the presence, who went before the camp of Israel, brought the tables of the divisions of the years, from the time of the creation of the law, and of the testimony of the weeks, of the Jubilees, from the day of the new creation, when the heavens and the earth shall be renewed and all their creation, according to the powers of the heaven.
The Enochians were also behind the Testaments of the 12 Patriarchs, Aramaic Levi, the Dead Sea Temple Scroll, and a mysterious document pieced together from a mountain of Dead Sea Scroll fragments called 4QMMT. It highlights some of the important reasons the Dead Sea sect broke away from the rest of Judean society to begin with. But there's even more to the puzzle, since it's likely that another stream of Enochic Judaism branched off and flowed into the early Jesus movement. While Ascetic Judaism slowly morphed into Rabbinic Judaism, represented today in every synagogue in the world, it was actually mainline Enochic Judaism that constituted the Jewish roots of Christianity. But we're still left with a question of who was behind the separation of the Dead Sea sect from the rest of the Enochians. Who was the mysterious teacher of righteousness who led them? To be sure, the language of the Dead Sea Scrolls is suffused with euphemism and mystery. The parchments speak of an evil or wicked priest, but they never specify his name.
The wicked priest pursued the teacher of righteousness to destroy him in his hot anger in the place of his exile. And in the time appointed for the repast of the Day of Atonement, he appeared to them, to destroy them and to overthrow them on the fast day of their Sabbath rest.
History tells us of a great Jewish freedom fighter and rebel commander who fought against the foreign Syrian occupiers of the land in the middle of the 2nd century BCE. His name was Jonathan, and he was one of a band of brothers led by one Judah, subsequently known as the Maccabees. They rescued the land from foreign oppression and ejected the Syrian overlords from Jerusalem, rededicating the temple in a feast still commemorated today, known as Hanukkah.
At that time, Judas and his brothers said, "Look, our enemies have been crushed. Let's go up to cleanse and rededicate the sanctuary." All the army gathered together and went up to Mount Zion. They found the sanctuary deserted, the altar treated with disrespect, and the gates burned.
Jonathan, however, subsequently assumed the role and title of high priest, even though he was not from the priestly line of Zadok. It's speculated that either he or his brother Simon might in fact have been the wicked priest of whom the scrolls speak. It's also speculated that a Zadokite priest of the proper lineage, who came to be called the teacher of righteousness, broke away from the ruling class and the temple establishment at precisely this time, somewhere between 152 and 143 BCE.
And they will perceive their iniquity and will recognize that they are guilty men. Yet for 20 years they will be like blind men groping for a way. And God will observe their deeds, that they sought him with a whole heart, and he will raise for them a teacher of righteousness to guide them in the way of his heart.
But the scrolls also mention someone known as the man of the lie and the scoffer.
There arose the man of scoffing, who dropped on Israel waters of deceitfulness, and caused them to wander in the wilderness, where there is no path, to bring down the everlasting heights, to turn away from the ways of righteousness, and to remove the boundary that the forefathers have set for their inheritance.
Is this the same as the wicked priest? It's been suggested that there was a split within the larger Essene movement, and that the teacher of righteousness led a small group of devoted followers out to the shores of the Dead Sea, where they built their own community, today known as Qumran.
They shall separate from the session of perverse men to go to the wilderness, in order to prepare the way of truth.
Who are the perverse men? The Jerusalem priesthood? Other Essenes? Nothing is settled, no theory proved, and every answer only provokes more questions. Another mystery has to do with the Hebrew term yachad, by which the members of the sect referred to themselves. But does this refer to the entire Essene sect, or only to the small elite group who settled at Qumran? Was Qumran the headquarters of the entire sect, where the most elite members lived lives of strict celibacy? After all, Josephus declares that some of the sectarians practiced celibacy, while others raised families, knowing that otherwise they would go extinct.
Moreover, there is another order of Essenes who agree with the rest as to their way of living, and customs, and laws, but differ from them in the point of marriage, as thinking that by not marrying, they cut off the principal part of human life, which is the prospect of succession. Indeed, if all men should be of the same opinion, the whole race of mankind would fail.
But we have to pause here, because with a bit of scholarly sleuthing and detective work, it now seems possible, if not likely, that the Dead Sea sect, living in their desert settlement called Qumran, though usually identified as the Essenes, were actually a splinter group who broke away from the larger Essene or Enochian party. Then there's a mystery regarding the fate of the teacher of righteousness. We're told that he was slain by the wicked priest on the holiest day of the Jewish calendar, Yom Kippur.
The wicked priest pursued the teacher of righteousness to swallow him up in his hot fury, even to his place of exile, and on the occasion of the sacred season of rest, the Day of Atonement, appeared among all of them to swallow them up and to make them stumble on the fast day, their Sabbath of rest.
How could a priest of Israel, wicked or not, engage in mortal combat on the Day of Atonement? Could it be that the righteous teacher followed the sectarian solar calendar, while the wicked priest followed the luna-solar calendar that is used in Judaism today? But with all of the questions swirling around the identity of the sect, it appears clear that the Enochians, aka the Essenes, thought of themselves as the true spiritual temple.
Then shall the party of the Yahad truly be established, an eternal planting, a temple for Israel. Behold a mystery, they are a holy of holies for Aaron, true witnesses to justice, chosen by God's will, to atone for the land and to dole out to the wicked what is due to them.
They were the sons of light. They were the Holy of Holies. And curiously enough, this is the exact language that we later find in the New Testament.
Do you not know that you are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of God dwells in you?
Were the early Christians somehow the spiritual descendants of the Essenes? Were the Essenes the parent group, the umbrella group, who spawned them as well? And yet, for all of their high-minded visions and their prophecies of a new messianic age on the near horizon, neither the Enochians nor the Essenes survived past the 1st century of the Common Era. But their thoughts and their influence persists until our own day. What exactly became of this ancient sect? That's a question we still need to examine.